Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Fernay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Fernay.
It's Maryland Crabs time.
Oh, that sounded bad. Well, it is.
You're not the supportive partner that I started with, John.
Nope. Well, hey, the honeymoon's over.
All right, so we're doing these podcasts. We release them on Thursdays. We're going to tear down that fourth wall a little bit. So we record them on Thursdays at the same time that they're released. So as we're recording this right now, you are listening to... We just released the Kenny Burns podcast. So if you have not listened to that, go back and listen to that. That was awesome. Yep. Kenny Burns is a reporter out of Baltimore. He works for WYPR. He's been kind of all over the place, and he's got his finger on the pulse of Maryland politics. So if you've not listened to that or any of the other podcasts, go back and give them a listen.
Right. He's also the BFF of Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake.
Yes, they're going to Bermuda together.
Yep. Good friends.
And you know what? I know you hate when I do this, but you have to excuse the sound on that one. I had pressed the wrong button, and I obsessed about it till John stopped taking my texts and told me to stop being a baby. But I was thinking about that. Yes, I screwed up the audio on that one, but that's actually pretty much your fault. Because we both know I'm irresponsible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so irresponsible, ear from the Latin not, and responsible from the English responsible. So I'm not responsible. Right. So if I'm not responsible,
therefore I am.
You're responsible. That's so right. My screwing up was actually your fault.
You know what? This is...
So I think you owe me an apology, John.
I'm terribly sorry. I see how this podcast is working out just as good as
we'll move on,
WRNR.
And we'll never speak of this again. But from now on, I want you to make sure I make no more mistakes.
Yeah. But hey, go to YouTube. Go to iTunes. Subscribe to us. Rate us. Leave us some fun, nice messages.
And the reason that we're bringing this up now is also because we're in the middle of the throes of the election right now, which means that there's a lot of stuff that's going on. So what's going on today, on Thursday, which is October 28th, I think? 7th. And, my credit card bill's due tomorrow. Again, you've got to really cover me, John. We're going to talk offline. But so a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today is going to be old news next year or next week, so we're kind of learning that right now. So you got to bear with us on that because we are going to be talking about the national election a little bit today. We're going to be talking about some local stuff. We're going to talk about a local perspective to that. And speaking of which, I think what got us on this subject was I was driving to my son's football game up in North County. I live in Annapolis, and he had a game up in Pasadena. And it was interesting to me how the sea of campaign signs turned from Clinton to Trump. There was almost like a line once you crossed into Broadneck that all of a sudden it became very Trump. And I just thought about that. What is the difference between the Trump supporters and the Hillary supporters that you have that kind? Whenever you go to the Eastern Shore or Western Maryland or even North County, that all of a sudden becomes a sea. I mean, even if the Republican bastions, the Republicans are not all on board with Trump, obviously.
Most of them are not.
No. So I was thinking about this, and I actually heard, and we're going to do something different here. I listen to a ton of podcasts aside from our own. Actually, I don't listen to ours. But I listened to, one of them was We the People, and that's Josh Steps. And if you don't listen, it's a pretty good, it's fairly liberal, but it can be a little uneven. But Josh Steps I first found him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he's really astute when it comes to American politics. He's Australian. And he broke down the Trump supporter because, again, I'm not going to defend Hillary supporters who can be kind of shrill. But the Trump supporters really do kind of mystify me because this is the first time we've had this kind of candidate. So I'm a little mystified as to what draws people. But what I want to do right now is I'm going to play a little bit, about 2 minutes from the We the People podcast, which you should subscribe to. So don't sue me, Josh. And it explains a little bit about Trump supporters. So let's take a listen.
Well, also,
love him all
his supporters are not, I'm trying not to say this in a condescending way, but they're not interested in facts. They're interested in
feelings.
In feelings and the vibe. There's a really interesting book out at the moment. I wish I could remember the lady's name, but she's been doing quite a lot of press lately because she's a sociologist from San Francisco, and she spent quite a lot of time in Louisiana talking to Trump supporters. And her analogy about their worldview, she talks about what she calls the deep story of their lives and of all of our lives, which has less to do with facts and more to do with our narrative about how the world works and our place in it. And her articulation of the Trump supporters' worldview is, you've been standing in a line, waiting for the American dream, doing everything right, and all of a sudden there are line cutters cutting in ahead of you. There are black people on affirmative action, there are refugees who are coming in, there are people on food stamps, there are people on welfare, and now you're not going anywhere. The American dream is as elusive as ever, and now even the commander-in-chief is on the side of the line jumpers. Like, even he is sort of, with a wink and a nod, culturally, on the side of all of these new upstarts who are undermining your patient spot in the line towards the American dream. And that's the kind of mindset that these sort of white working-class people who've been left behind by the 21st century economy feel. And it doesn't matter whether Trump has a gotcha moment where he says something incorrect. His gist, his vibe resonates in that way. Like, he is not one of the hoity-toity coastal cultural elites that looks down their noses in a Jon Stewart-y, Samantha Bee way on the people who've been waiting patiently in line for the American dream to come to Arkansas.
So I find that very interesting. I find that it really paints, instead of, you have that Samantha Bee, Jon Stewart kind of look as the hicks and the idiots who are Trump supporters, and that's to do them a disservice, and that's very clumsy to do that. But what struck me was they say that a lot of Trump supporters go on feelings rather than facts, and that's not an insult. And I was thinking about that after the first debate when you had Newt Gingrich, who was talking with CNN reporter, and he says, the Americans feel that crime is out of control, and she said violent crime is at its lowest point in 25 years. He goes, yes, but people feel that crime, and she goes, but it's not. And they had this argument that lasted about 4 minutes where he was getting frustrated, and her frustration was, you're saying things that are not true. I was reading the Capitol today, and I go into the comment section, and
stupid.
It is stupid. And by the way, MD Veritas from the Capitol, you're a horrible human being. You're a piece of shit. So, but anyway, someone they were talking about voter fraud, and one person said voter fraud is a huge problem. Voter fraud, and it has to be addressed. It's not a huge problem. It's not. If anyone can find me, I think there's something like 31 confirmed cases, and that's at fraud at the voting polling places, but there's no widespread. It's just not, but people feel that it is. And my in-laws, who live in Altoona, Pennsylvania, a very rural area in Appalachia, but they'll rail about illegal immigrants and inner city crime. They live in a mountain town. They've never seen an illegal immigrant. It doesn't take their job, but it's just, I think that's a great that people are feeling that things are true, even though they're not, and you can't tell them that they're not true. And again, we'll get into Hillary supporters in a second. I'm not giving them a pass, but I've never seen an election before where facts just don't matter.
Well, I think you vote emotionally in most elections.
I don't know if you do, because there was not. Well, sure, certainly. I think if you look at President Obama, Hope and Change, that was. There was an emotional component to that, but I don't think there's an emotional component to either the Bushes or Clinton. I don't.
Well, certainly to Hillary Clinton there are. She's got the vagina vote. That's. There's so many women that I've seen that oh my gosh, this is a glass ceiling election. Just as Obama was the. This is the first black president we're ever going to elect, or not ever, but this is the first black president we're electing here. I certainly think that is. You look at Obama, and in my generation, he is the youngest president that we've had.
Yeah, in your generation. Yeah. And how old was he? He was 46, 47?
Yeah, something.
No, wait, hold on. Let's go back. He's 54, so he was like 46. Crap, I'm 46.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So, he was 44, right? 44? Yeah.
Around
46.
Yeah, because,
again,
Kennedy was 42, right?
And that mobilized the young vote, the youth vote.
He was young, he was black, he was hip, relatively, hip.
Yeah, it was before he got the dad genes, but I think you vote emotionally. I think you turn around, you look at where some core values are, and that's where it goes. It's, hey, I'm a conservative, so do I lean toward a candidate that's more conservative? And I don't necessarily know that people vote on specific.
But I don't know about that too, because think about, we've talked about identity politics here for a while, where we said that you buy the package, that if you vote Republican, you have to buy the whole package, which is fiscal responsibility, small government, no interference, and kind of libertarian twist to that. Global warming's a hoax. It's, and if you're a Democrat, you have to vote for larger government's a solution. That you have to be pro-choice. You have to buy those things. You can't be a conservative who believes in global warming, and you can't be a pro-life Democrat. It just doesn't happen. But if you look at this election, I believe that I think the Democrats have stuck to the package, because Hillary is not really deviating from that. And by the way, Hillary 10, 12 years ago, well, maybe 20 years ago, she would have been a moderate Republican or a slightly left-leaning Republican.
Yeah.
But I look at the conservatives and say they've kind of, to a huge extent, they've kind of abandoned their principles, because you have a man here who's not a true conservative. If you're talking about the family values camp or platform, which has been what they built on, he's not there. So that's where I look and go, are you being true to your party? And should you be? Should you be voting party loyalty? Or should you be voting what's best for the country? And we're stuck in this election because we do have two lousy candidates. And I'm sorry, Hillary supporters, you have a lousy candidate. Yeah. The email thing is the email server is a big deal. Her pay to play is a big deal. It really is, and
and it's a different deal than Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump and his womanizing, his grab him by the pussy is a big deal. I guess, but I mean, that really didn't surprise anybody. I mean, I was shocked that people were shocked. No, yes, I agree with you there, but I mean, again, it is a big deal for a presidential election. The lack of taxes. Now, I in any other year, I probably would be a Trump supporter, not a Trump supporter, but a Republican, without thinking about it, and that's not the case now. Personally,
put anyone but Cruz up against Hillary Clinton. Any Republican up against Hillary Clinton,
anyone that was in the race, and
they would have destroyed her.
They would have destroyed her, absolutely. You got to love it now that Rick Santorum's all of a sudden looking pretty good to the Republicans.
Well, yeah, well, I mean,
as is O'Malley for the Dems,
And Rubio, I mean, Rubio's in a tough spot because it was interesting. He was talking about WikiLeaks today or yesterday, maybe. And he was talking about the Republicans had better not be as gleeful as they have been about WikiLeaks. And he was the only Republican who said this, saying, this could turn on us very quickly. Because the WikiLeaks thing bothers me on a couple levels. The first is, do I think it should be out there? Yeah, I think the WikiLeaks are perfectly valid. But only one side is being released. So, and it's not being done in enough time where you can vet this information. So, and I'm not surprised by much what I'm hearing there. You would hear that in any campaign. There's very few things in there that really shocks me. And then all the pearl clutching on Fox News going, oh my God, she talked about how they were going to handle Bill's womanizing. Well, of course they talked about that because that was a major liability for them.
Sure.
But I think to the point that my biggest problem with this is that this is obviously the Russians who are releasing this. Obviously, every one of our intelligence units, they're still investigating the FBI. They're all saying that right now. We should all have a problem with the fact that we have a foreign entity who is actively interfering in our election, and that they can do this at will. And it is the Russians who are doing this. And if they want us to elect Trump, that's got to give you pause. But that's what Rubio had said yesterday, saying, look, this dog could turn around and bite us as well, because if you saw the emails from the Republican elections, I guarantee you there'd be no difference.
Yeah.
Same thing about something about the IRS. Same thing about the IRS. What happened with the IRS and the Tea Party is something that's happened with every administration. It's been a tacit weapon of every administration going back to Eisenhower, or even Truman maybe, where you have the IRS is used as a political weapon. It's weaponized with any president who's in power. And I think the Republicans did the equivalent of burning a source, where they decide they're going to make an issue out of it. When the Bushes both did it, Reagan certainly did it. Now that it's out there and they make it sound like it's only Democrats, they cannot weaponize the IRS should they win the election.
Quick question for you. Do you think with the Russians and their involvement in this whole thing, let's just make the assumption that it is Russian involvement, which I don't disagree with you. Do you think that they are doing this because they want to see Trump elected, or are they doing this because they want to not see Hillary elected?
Well, I think
would this be happening with Rubio? Would this be happening with Kasich?
Probably. I mean, you got to look at traditionally, Russian relationships with the United States always are at its coldest point at the end of an election cycle. And then whoever's elected, they're going to warm up. And so it goes to a peak. Let's call it like it goes to, out of 10 being the best, it goes to like an 8. And then the next year it's a 7, then 6. And by the time we get to the election, it's at a low point, and they're flexing muscles and they're rattling sabers. And that happens every election. the UN or NATO made a big mistake by pushing Ukraine into pulling them closer to NATO, something that we swore we'd never do. The Russians reacted the way that we would have reacted, so there's no surprise there. But now the Balkan states or the Baltic states are getting a little bit nervous. But they're not an enemy. People got to remember that the Russians are not our enemy; they're a rival. The Chinese are not our enemy; they're a rival. There's a difference between the two. But we have to have a big problem with the fact that they're really actively participating in an election. And the Republicans at any given time would be losing their shit over this if the roles were reversed. And they'd have a full right to. Mm-hmm. I like the whole idea of WikiLeaks. I like pulling back the layers and seeing how government works. So I like this idea. I don't like the fact it's coming from the Russians. And I don't like the fact that it's only targeting one side. I'd like to see the Republican side as well. I think, not to be fair, but to be fair.
Well, let's also sit there and back up to our conversation with Kenny Burns last week. WikiLeaks, yes, it's a great source and whatnot, but why couldn't the Russians be doctoring those sources as well? So we don't know.
We don't know, but I mean, I think the argument
could be made that they're not denying.
They're not denying. They're just saying that they're not confirming nor denying. That means, but if they were doctored, they'd be screaming. And John Podesta, I mean, none of it to me seems. There's nothing crazy in there. There's nothing in there that really surprises me. It's, you don't want to see how the sausage is made. This is how government works. If you look at, and I think Bernie Sanders said the same thing. He goes, hey, if you hacked our emails, you would see some very unkind things said about Hillary Clinton. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
You and I send texts back and forth that, frankly, would probably not be. That's why I'm not running for president.
It's funny. You mentioned earlier on your way up, I guess, presumably Route 2 up to Pasadena, up to the Dina from Annapolis, and how the Trump signs divided. And I have not seen very many signs, period, in my travels. Now,
not me either.
This election season versus the last one.
Yeah, it's weird. It's well, think about this. We're not going to see. We're kind of isolated from a few things. So, like, the signs you have are supporters. People call in, they get a sign, they put it in their front yard. We're not seeing any ads because we are not we are a heavily Democratic state. We are a definite Democrat. So why would anyone spend their money to either try and swing
Republican or Democrat?
Yeah. So
on the presidential
outside of the primaries, we're not going to see any ads. That's why you're in radio silence right now. You're not seeing that. But I was thinking about this too, and someone made a good point on this. I'm trying to remember who it was, but they were talking about it might have been my hero Dan Carlin, where he was just talking about Republican versus Democrat, and he's talking about the core values of each. And he said that when you look at the cities, and that's what they meant. Josh Zepp had mentioned, like the coasties, the West Coast and the East Coast, and how we kind of sneer at the people in the middle. But when you have to live on top of each other, like you do in the Northeast corridor, there's a feeling of community. There's a feeling that goes beyond community of interdependence. That you have to work together, you have to tolerate each other, live together, and that all comes to almost a socialistic sort of swing. Where if you live in an area where it's where you have to be more self-reliant, like out in Western Maryland, Garrett County, over on the Eastern Shore, where your nearest neighbor is a mile away, you have a self-reliance, and you don't have that. It's a pull yourself up by your bootstraps sort of attitude. So you don't have that. So that would align with the Republican core values. But I will say, I get that. Like if we listen to that quote or that clip from Josh Zepp's, I understand why my in-laws, who are from a very poor town in Western PA, support Donald Trump. I understand why he appeals to them, because he says he's going to make everything better. But if you're a upper middle class person,
it's not so bad.
I don't get why you would look at Trump saying everything's shit. I don't get that. We certainly have problems, but so I get why people support Trump if you were making less than like $50K. But I mean, if you live in Severna Park, and
you're doing okay.
You're doing great. So I don't get that.
Well, I mean, the bellwether's always been too. Ask yourself, are you better now than you were 4 years ago? And I think we're in a situation where most people can't say whether they were or they aren't. They're right on. I mean, I don't think there's much change between 4 years.
Well, 8 years.
Well, yeah,
Well, there's a huge change for 8 years. We were in the worst. We were in the worst economic recession since 1929. So I mean, yeah, we were
right. But if you look back at 4 years, back when McCain was running with it was Romney. And,
yeah, it was Romney.
Romney and Ryan.
Yeah,
Romney
I like Paul Ryan.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't think we're far worse or far better. I think we're there. So that makes it a little bit difficult to sit there and say, oh my God, I'm broke and poor. I got to vote the bastards out. I mean, that's an easy thing to say.
But then Trump and some Republicans, including Newt Gingrich. By the way, Newt Gingrich is a piece of shit. I'm going to say it right now. All the problems now...
Does he hang out with, like, MD Veritas?
Yeah. All the problems that we have in the country right now are because of Newt Gingrich. All the separation, all the nastiness on Facebook, all the division, it's all because of Newt Gingrich and his contract with America in 94. No compromise. He's an awful human being. And the fact that Trump is running as an outsider and he has Newt Gingrich, who caused most of these problems, as one of his chief advisors, is freaking ridiculous. But
this rant brought to you by
but he'll point out and he'll say, look at the GDP. It's growing at like 1-2%. Which is stupid if you compare to India and China. Well, India and China are developing economies, so they're going to grow in leaps and bounds. And by the way, China says they're growing 5% a year, and they're not. That's a blatant lie. But of course, we're going to be slower because we're much, much larger. That's what happens. You don't grow as fast. And look at Facebook. When Facebook starts, they doubled every month for like 5 years, and they slowed down, and now they're having like 1% growth or 0.5%, because it gets to a point of diminishing returns where you just don't grow as fast. But
well, it'll be interesting. I mean, to see what it is. I know I was looking on Facebook, and actually today is the first day of early voting, which will be, when you hear this will be the last day of early voting. And the lines were about 40 minutes from what I heard pretty much uniformly around the county this morning. And Devin Tucker, who's out in West County, he's run for, I think he ran for county council last time around. And he was saying that they're heavy Trump support with Trump signs in the West County Library, or the Odenton Library, for early voting. And I also heard via Facebook through Michelle Corkadell, who's a Republican, also has run in the past, and she said that it was also very heavy turnout, as well as heavy Trump lines or Trump signs down in Edgewater, at the Edgewater Library. So it seems that in two areas, well, West or South County, I would expect. West County, I would not have expected to see a huge Trump.
You know what, though? But I think I've heard people talk about, especially on Fox News, where they'll say, look at the rallies, look at Trump versus Clinton. People they're so much more engaged. I'd say because people are not excited about Hillary. She's medicine that you have to take, whereas the people who support Trump are wildly supportive of him. Yeah. So it's anecdotal for the most part.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it'll be funny and interesting to see. I think that the pollsters will be confused, and I'm not going to say that I think Trump is going to win this, but I think the polls are going to be very skewed, because I still think there's so many people that realize how divisive he is, what a jackass he can be. I think you're going to find exit polls like, hey, how did you vote? I don't think I'm going to go there.
Yeah, well, as we're talking right now, and this is going to make us seem ridiculous, but so this is Thursday the 28th, the 27th.
27th.
It's, I think Trump has a 2% lead in Florida, and they switched. Let's see, Florida was a lean Democrat to now toss up, and I think Ohio might be the same. So there's two key battleground states.
Well, I know there's a poll the LA Times does that's very interesting. They do it a lot differently than
it's pretty interesting
than how other people do it. And as opposed to like, hey, who do you support, Trump or Clinton? Makes it pretty easy. But the LA Times USC tracking poll right now has them at a tie, with a Clinton of 5.7 with all the polls. But how they do that is they say, okay, hey Tim, how likely are you to vote on a scale from 1 to 10? And then who are you likely to support? And on a scale from 1 to 10, where does your support fail or fall? That way...
So it's not definitive, it's a sliding scale.
It is. So, I mean, if you say, yeah, I might go out and vote, I give it a 4. And then all of a sudden, okay, so now that whatever you vote for is weighted less than, hell yeah, I ain't missed an election since 42 when I was, that's going to be rated a 10. Weighted a 10 for that. So it'd be interesting.
I've never seen, and I think the predecessor for this was probably well, I don't know. Fox News certainly contributed. I don't want to put it all at their feet. Like Sean Hannity certainly. I mean, he's a bomb thrower. But I think what stuns me the most is going onto Facebook. Like if you go to Fox News or CNN or look at the comments on that, those are just anonymous trolls who are just going to say things in their miserable little shitty cubicles, just that they can't say to people live, so they're going to type that. But now I'm seeing it bleed into Facebook significantly, where I'm seeing people that I know, like fights on their Facebook page where people are just being nasty to people they know. How do we come back from that?
I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, seriously, there's been such a huge loss of civility in this country where people cannot be civil with each other, that if you disagree, that you're stupid, or that just... I mean, I'm talking about both sides. I really am. It's just... I don't know how you come back from that. Certainly, neither of them are going to be a uniter. They're not. It's just I don't, and it's not in the best interest of. Well, let's go beyond Fox News. Let's assume that Trump's going to form his media empire, which he would be stupid not to do, which is Stephen Bannon and Sean Hannity and Roger Ailes and Trump, and that is going to become an extreme alt-right media outlet. It's all but certain that they're going to do this. Although it might not be a bad thing because then you compartmentalize the fringes of a group, because there are most Republicans are centrist.
You've got the alt-right.
Yeah,
network.
Give them their own network, and that's fine. But I mean, they're going to certainly fan those flames. But I've just never seen so much bitterness and just, even hatred. I see people who live the exact same lives in my neighborhood. They live the exact same lives, and one's a Democrat, one's a Republican, and they can't be in the same room together.
Tooth and nail.
And I'm like, you live the exact same lives. It's all ideological.
Well, I also think that you look at the two candidates that are fighting. I think it's been a very dirty fight.
Yeah, and it's on both sides.
And they lead by example.
I'm not doing a false equivalency. It is both sides.
It is. I think both sides sit there and they feel that it's okay to sit there and go with that. It'll be interesting. I mean, Maryland obviously is going to vote Hillary.
Yep.
And actually, last week I turned around and over the last week I turned around and had a chance to go out and just ask people real quickly. I don't want to know who they are or everything else. It's just like, hey, who are you voting for? Who are you supporting? And we asked that, and I don't think there are any surprises, but here are some of your neighbors.
I am voting for Hillary Clinton because Trump and his platform are scary.
I'll be voting for Hillary Clinton this year. I believe she's much more prepared for this office than her opponent.
I'm voting for Hillary Clinton.
I'm voting for Hillary Clinton mainly because I don't want Trump to win.
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton because she's better than Trump.
They both suck, so it's whoever I'm feeling at that precise moment.
Trump, make America great again.
Well, there obviously I think it's
no surprises there.
Yeah, no. Hillary. Trump. Hillary. But yeah, I mean the national polls are going to be a lot differently. And last week also there was somebody that really surprised me, Michael Moore, who, to use a term that you've coined, seemingly using in this podcast as a catchphrase, but is a real piece of shit. Personally, I think came out with a very...
I like him, but I don't agree with there's people I disagree with that I like. I kind of like him just because he's... I like the fact that he called George Bush out at the Academy Awards.
I had a great Michael Moore run-in.
I like Ann Coulter. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. I like her.
Michael Moore and I were on a flight with my son. We were going over to Europe, and he was on the same flight with his son. And when my kid was little, he had glasses, had a scar on the forehead, and looked just like Harry Potter when he was little. So Michael Moore is sitting here looking over across the aisle at me, and he's looking at my kid, and I'm looking over at Michael Moore trying to figure out, is that Michael Moore? And we're sitting there doing this stare off probably for about 20 minutes, and he looks over, he goes, I go, hey, are you? And he gives me the nod. And then he looks over, he goes, is he? I went, no. It was funny. He was going to Poland with his son. But yeah, no, Michael Moore came out, talked about Donald Trump, said, here's why Donald Trump will win, and here's why he should win.
Donald Trump came to the Detroit Economic Club and stood there in front of the Ford Motor executives and said, if you close these factories as you're planning to do in Detroit and build them in Mexico, I'm going to put a 35% tariff on those cars when you send them back, and nobody's going to buy them. It was an amazing thing to see. No politician, Republican or Democrat, had ever said anything like that to these executives. And it was music to the ears of people in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, the Brexit states. You live here in Ohio, you know what I'm talking about. Whether Trump means it or not is kind of irrelevant because he's saying the thing.
He's got a point.
He does. It's funny because this is where...
And you're looking at battleground states.
Well, do you know what this... All right, so at this point, it'll be about 10 days ago, about 12 days ago or whatever, it was that SNL sketch with Tom Hanks, which I thought was one of the best pieces. That was the one where he was on Black Jeopardy.
Yes.
And I thought that was one of the most poignant and politically sensitive, not sensitive as far as huggy and snuggly and all that, but I mean sensitive as far as that someone perceived what the situation really was that the people who support Trump are not that different than, say, people in the black community, for example. And that's what they were saying, is that they agreed on everything until they got to Black Lives Matter, and then it all fell apart. But they really agreed on everything. I would say that about Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street. They agree with probably 80% of each other as far as, the big government or the 1%, but they just call it different things. So it's funny that you see kind of the shifting is that you see people who are pro-union, like Western Pennsylvania is super pro-union, but they're big Trump supporters, and Trump's the Republican candidate. The Republicans are generally antithetical to unions. So that's where you start scratching your head going, no one thinks this is odd, that all of a sudden that you have a Republican candidate up in Michigan and these Ohio industrial areas saying that, talking to union members and getting their support. That's crazy. It's also bullshit, by the way. Yeah. He's not, and he's not bringing manufacturing jobs back. It's just not happening because what I think he has people believing is that he's somehow going to wave a wand and bring the manufacturing jobs back. When in fact the jobs didn't necessarily leave to Canada and China, but they were automated out. They're just jobs that the automation takes care of now. I mean, Detroit's not coming back.
Just you've lost it as attrition. Sure.
Yeah, it's sad. I don't know what you do when you live in those areas. It's horrible. You can say retrain for something else. What do you do when and the same goes for coal mining. Coal mining that's not coming back. It's you have fracking now, which is responsible for a lot of the cost drop that we have in fuel at the pumps. And it's replaced coal, and these areas are devastated. So, sure, he's going to tell them these things, and Mike Moore, he's approving this protectionism. But I mean, yeah, sure, if you're going to slap tariffs on, I don't know, you're starting trade wars, and he wants to start a trade war with China, which would be stupid.
It would be stupid.
But it's funny because you look at Mike Moore, and it's the sort of thing where the Republicans despised Julian Assange for so long, and now they're ready to carry him around on their shoulders. And are we seeing this bizarro world where all of a sudden you have Mike Moore being carried? Well, he's a pretty big guy. They're not going to carry him around, but it's bizarre.
That is. Well, in 5 days, by the time this is broadcast or published, or what's the word, released, whatever you want to call it, we will have a new president. That's one thing for sure. We're not sure who it's going to be.
Yeah, I worry about the voting, the day of the voting. And that's going to be a mess. I just see a lot of confrontations at the polls, and I hope not, genuinely. And the aftermath is something unprecedented. I just wonder, where does everybody dust off their Facebook accounts and start posting pictures of their kids again, or does the bitterness continue, and is this the new normal?
Kittens.
Well, on that depressing note.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of beat the presidential election for a little bit.
So let's look at the state. So I want you to explain to me the whole judge thing. So in Annapolis, 10 days ago.
That's down onto the local. You want to talk about that first?
Yeah. Let's do
that. We've got a bunch of things in Arundel County that we are going to be voting on. A couple of county charter
6 of them.
Questions, right? And my recommendation is that you vote for all of them, with the exception of the one that jacks up the price that they can do stuff without getting competitive bids.
They go from 50,000 to 75.
I think it's going from 25 to 75.
Okay, wow, that's a jump.
And Shue wanted 100. County Executive Steve Shue wanted 100,000, and the council brought it back down. I think you need to rein that in, because that makes it too easy for somebody to give your buddy a
so explain that
there. Basically, they're saying that if you've got a service or a product that you need to purchase, if it's under $25,000, you can just
department head, something like that. Yeah. So let's say that you're getting a copier, right. or is that a bad example? Or
no, that's fine. Say it's a copier, it's $20,000. You can just pretty much order it, or you can call somebody and say, "Hey Tim, how much is your copiers?" and "Hey John, how much are your copiers?" and write the check and get the copier. The ceiling was $25,000, so if you wanted to buy a $25,001 copier, you had to go out to a formal bidding or request for proposals process, where you evaluated it. You had to take the lower bid and everything else, unless there was a reason for not to. They want to raise that limit. So now all of a sudden we could buy 5 copiers for the office.
I guess I understand that there is room for fuckery there, but on the other hand, I see that it can streamline a process that would be unnecessarily long.
I don't know that it has to be necessarily long. I mean, I think there's a happy medium there where you could turn around and maybe say, fine, we need to get 3 written proposals. It doesn't need to be a written process.
So I was on the board of my neighborhood association for 15 years, something like that. And
a good friend of mine's on that. I think he's on that board. Mark Apter?
Yes. So it was, but the problem that we had was if you wanted to do anything, that half the board was working in the private industry, and the other half were government workers, whether it be federal or state or whatever. And they're all great people. Nothing against that. I have relatives. My grandfather was a federal judge, and so that said, whenever we want to do anything, those of us who are in the private industry say, we have the money budget, let's do this right now. And everyone else is like, whoa, let's slow down. We got to get a few bids. Let's do. And so doing something like our playground, which should have been, it's a small thing. We had the money budgeted. It should have taken 2-3 months. It took us 3 years because every time we wanted to do something, the people on the board, because that was their culture, their work culture. And I just see, and I think that's the first charter.
You're also looking at an economy of size. I mean, we've got Anne Arundel County, which is a fairly big thing. I mean, you've got, a new playground for you guys is huge.
Right.
Okay. This is like sitting there saying we want to build a bypass on a county level. Do you need approval for somebody to go to Staples and buy a new printer?
Oh, I was thinking like the big ones.
That's something like that. I mean, do you need it necessarily? I mean, I think it's a matter of checks and balances. I think you keep it low.
Those charter amendments always get me because they get really sneaky when they do things like
words,
that.
The double negatives.
So I remember it was about 5 years ago. They said that they were going to limit the per diem to be no more than this. And then they couldn't spend any more than this for the legislators. But what it was actually, it was raising it. So instead of saying we're raising the per diem from this to this, they're saying we're going to limit it to this. It's some sneaky shit when they do these charter amendments.
When they did the slot machines, we never voted on slot machines. We voted on video lottery terminals.
Right. Well,
and everyone said, "Oh, that's like the pink things that are in the 7-Eleven." Yeah, okay.
That one ticked me off. This is where Marylanders. Yeah, if you're from Maryland, you're an idiot. If you voted for the first time. And that was, they said, we want this is why referendums drive me crazy, because we were flooded with all the ads saying, well, this is going to go to education, vote for the slots, it's going to go, and the opponent said it's not going to go to education, and it's a shell game, and as soon as they get this, they're going to want table games, and then the Cordish put out the ad saying, no, it is going to go to education, trust us, we are not going to come at you for table games. Then a year later.
Table games?
Table games came as the next referendum, and Marylanders voted in again. And remember, none of that money went to... everyone thought, if you have $1 billion for education, now it's going to be $1.5 billion. And that's not how it works. They back it out of the budget, so that technically the money is there, but your money never changes.
Right. And some did go to education. Not all of it is going as we thought. But
No, it doesn't. It doesn't go to education. It's all a shell game. If you have $1 billion... and you have $500 million from gambling, then they back out $500 million from the general fund and supplement it with the money that they brought in from the gambling. So your budget is still $1 billion.
Right.
It doesn't. Technically, it goes to it, but it's not. They made it sound like everything was going to be an increase, and it wasn't an increase. And that's why we're fighting about these schools that are just pieces of shit.
That is true. Well, the other thing you talked about was the judges.
Yes, I don't understand that at all.
Okay, how Maryland is just screwed up as far as. How they elect judges. They're vetted by a committee, then appointed by the governor. The committee sends a bunch of names to the
Which
governor.
Judges? These are
circuit court judges.
Okay.
And then what they do is they serve until the next general election, where then they are put up for a continuance vote, or I don't know what the exact term is. Basically, do you think they should remain in office? And there are 4 judges that were appointed by a combination of Martin O'Malley, former Governor Martin O'Malley, and current Governor Larry Hogan, that have all been on this bench for probably about 2 years, maybe at the max. And they're running as a slate, as a team, if you will, against another judge who's from D.C. She lives in the county, but she was a sitting judge in D.C. She was an administrative law judge, which I think is a federal position. All of these judges are registered Republicans, and they are running on a Republican ticket, even though in the primaries and in the general, they don't indicate what party they're from. But they're getting their money from the Republicans, and they're running together as a team, as a slate. And you've probably seen the signs all around that said they're Hogan endorsed and the 4 judges strong. And you've got Judge Glenn Klavans, Judge Stacey McCormack, Judge Donna Schaeffer, and Judge Kathy Vitale. And Kathy Vitale and I are friends. I like her. I think she's good. And I think all of them are very good
She's
judges.
Former county representative from Severna Park.
Yeah. She lives up in Severna Park. She was a delegate, and she was also a county council.
That's right.
So she's really done the whole thing, and she's moved on all the way up to a judgeship. And I mean, well qualified and everything else. My problem is that they've turned around and they've ganged up, if you will, against somebody else who is equally qualified under the law. And you can make the argument that she's not nearly as qualified as these people who have sat on the bench. And the judges tends to be a race that nobody really thinks about.
I never do.
Nobody hears about the judges unless they do something, horribly wrong or some kind of crazy, like that judge in California that let that Brock Turner guy off with the rapist with the, 3 months in jail or whatever it was.
Well, in his defense, he had great hair. So
yeah. And it was only 20 minutes of action. That was a joke. In case nobody saw that. I mean, that was not attached. That was horrible. So I mean, my position basically is, and I've always been opposed to slates. And Paul Hackner ran against a slate, and he got it. And in 2012, Judge Alliston Asti also ran against a slate, and ousted former Judge Ron Jaroszau, who went back into private practice, who's a Democrat. And what happens is the top 4 vote getters, regardless of party, will get these seats on the bench. And my advice, what I told everybody in my position is that you vote for the one that's not on the slate, which is Claudia Barber, versus and 3 others. And investigate. Find out which ones you like. Which ones has the most experience. I think Kathy Vitale probably has the longest time on the bench. The other ones, one was just appointed recently, less than a year ago. So you can't really argue that she's got all this experience being...
I totally can't get excited or outraged about any of that. The judges' races are just so boring to me.
Yeah, they are. Claudia Barber, she supposedly has some... I say some dirt, if you will. As a federal judge, she was suspended because she ran this and she's appealing this. And that was actually brought up, a little dirty politics, that was brought up by former Judge Ron Jaroszau, who is in private practice. He filed the ethics complaint on that. So she's appealing that. She did get an opinion from the State Board of Elections in Maryland that said it was fine for her to run. But they're making the argument that she's never argued in front of she's never argued in front of the circuit court. She's never presided in the circuit court, nor is anybody else that was just placed onto the court. If you're going to say that that's the reason that she can't be seated, well, I can say the same thing about Judge Vitale, Judge Schaeffer, Judge McCormack, or Judge Klavans. At one point, they had never presided over the circuit court. And there is a learning curve, I'm sure. Judge Alliston Asti, she had never been that type of an attorney. She was never a defense attorney. And she's been doing a very good job there. She's very well respected. She's, certainly there was a little bit of a learning curve, and I think that's there too. So I think my position, my endorsement is Claudia Barber and 3 others. But I would definitely do what I could do to break up the slate.
How do they run that way? Is that part of? Is that just? I look at the Democrats and Republicans set the rules for, and they're private entities, by the way. They're not mentioned. Parties are not mentioned in the Constitution. So. If you look at the national election, a lot of that is based on rules that are set up by 2 private entities. Is that something on the case locally too? They don't have to run as a slate, do they?
No, you don't. But they've got there's some benefits. You got the power, you've got the name recognition, you get more signs, you get more money. Hogan can turn around and endorse them. It's very difficult for Larry Hogan because he nominated 2 of these justices to not endorse them.
Hey, I was just looking at I was looking at a opinion poll that was done. I think Opinion Works. I think that's who they were, out of Annapolis. But they did. I was reading their poll from about 3 weeks ago, and this was after Hogan made the non-endorsement of Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. He is the most popular governor we've had since 1998. He's got a 66% approval rating among Democrats. 88% among Republicans, and even in Baltimore City, which is, that's Democrat headquarters, he's got like a 72% approval rating. He's wildly popular. I guess I can't wrap my mind around the popular. It's just not. Even Ehrlich he wasn't popular or unpopular. He was just kind of there. He was, but I was going to say Glendenning. Glendenning and Martin O'Malley, to an extent, became relatively unpopular at the ends of their terms.
Without a doubt. I mean, I had heard that he is the second most popular governor in the country right now.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with him. I like him.
No, he does. He's really done well. He's reached across the aisle.
You know why I like that too?
He's pissed off some people. He's going to piss off some more, but he's caved on some things too. And I don't hold that against him, but I mean that's just the nature of the beast with politics.
But I was talking to someone yesterday in my neighborhood, and she made a really great point because we were talking about Hogan versus like Steve Shue. And I said, Steve Shue with the medical marijuana was a mystery to me. Why did he pick that battle? Why did he pick that fight when it was absolutely unnecessary? He didn't even get support for the most ardent Republicans within his party. So why pick that fight? And right now with the transgender bathrooms,
you heard about his call to action on that one, didn't you?
No.
Yeah, he said, go to the board of ed and testify how you don't want transgendered students using the wrong bathrooms or the bathrooms that they identify with. They had 3 people show up to testify. And they were all kind of for it.
but I guess that's my point. Is I think Hogan's pretty smart because he's part of a party, but he's not he's not blinded by it, or he's not locked into that because he understands that it's about compromise, and he's not going to press certain things that maybe in a more Republican state you would. Whereas I think Shue sometimes, I have no problems with him per se, but I'm bewildered to these kind of missteps he makes that are kind of clumsy. That he's picking fights that he really should kind of be avoiding, and they're not really big fights to begin with. The transgender bathroom and which I think is a stupid. Is there seriously this something that's not Rosa Parks? It's not. I mean, no offense to transgender people, but I think there was no huge outcry, and I'm all for it. I guess if you put a petition in front of me, I guess I'll sign it. But that and the medical marijuana, why is he picking these fights that just seem kind of pointless? It just doesn't seem to be any political benefit to that.
I don't know what Steve Shue's long game is. Governor Hogan, I'm pretty sure, is looking for obviously a second term in office.
No, and I don't see a problem with that unless something huge happens.
At this point, I don't see it either. But is he looking for something beyond that? I mean, there's always been chitter and chatter about Hogan for president, and Christie should have jumped in when Christie got out. He probably have a good shot.
But I'll tell you what, if you think about that, and I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but you're talking about someone who genuinely is a uniter. Is Hogan. I mean, this is the second most Democratic state in the country behind Massachusetts.
And look what the hell he's done.
And look what he's done. And he's got everyone behind him. If he can do this on a state level in the richest state in the country, do you not think he could do this on a national level? He might. I mean, look. 10 years down the way.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. But I think Hogan's really looking kind of at the long game. Let me look at my next term in office,
right,
and beyond. I don't know that Shue's doing that, and I don't know what his long game is. I know when I talked to Josh Cohen when he was mayor of Annapolis, he said, "Oh my gosh, this is my dream job. I don't have any aspirations to go beyond that." And I'm like, well, obviously you do because you're term limited. But I don't know what Steve Shue's long game is. I don't know if he's looking to do anything beyond county executive. He did serve as a delegate for several years. Obviously, private industry. I mean, his private business holdings can certainly take up enough of his time and energy and.
Well, because I think, and this is what I think Republicans or the Trump supporters say that they hate, which is the establishment. And I get that. I understand why they these established politicians and the typical politicians, and certainly Hillary Clinton is that. I think about the Subway series a few years ago where she had a Yankees hat and a Mets cap in the public, and I'm like, that's so Weasley, because Christie would have picked one. I mean, right. You could say but it was such a cloying sort of pandering. And I look at someone like, and that to me, that's because she's a politician. You look at Hogan; he's a lot smarter than that. He's someone that people genuinely like. So. I guess my point is, I guess I'm mystified a little bit as to why people why Shue makes some of the steps, picks some of the fights that he does. I'm just not. It seems kind of clumsy to me. I'm not sure.
We'll have to figure that out. Stay tuned on that. That's for sure. But yeah, no, there's some interesting local races. I'm looking forward to early voting myself. I'm going to go out and do the early voting.
Oh, yeah, see, I'm going to go back. That's sort of like opening your present on Christmas Eve. I'd rather do it that day, be part of the excitement. Mm-hmm. Plus, because as much as I don't want to see chaos, and I don't want to see chaos at the polls. If there is going to be chaos, I want to be there. That's in the stage of video camera. I'm going to do it.
We'll see. I mean, I wonder what type of political games. And you talked about voter fraud a little bit. And I meant to mention this before. There is no widespread voter fraud that's ever been proven.
Nope.
There has been some intimidation. voter intimidation. And actually, I'm just hearing rumblings of that.
Oh, wait, we got to back up. You're not talking about the Black Panther thing, are you?
Just in general, just what you might be able to consider voter intimidation. Here in Annapolis, they did that, where they tried to move the polling place to the
Harbor House
from the Eastport Community Center down into someplace else. And I was like, oh no, now you're I mean, you can make that argument, but I mean, there may be some voter intimidation. There's certainly going to be some mistakes made. The election volunteers, the volunteer judges, essentially, they're paid here in Maryland. I don't know whether they're paid elsewhere in the country.
Oh, they're paid? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're actually doesn't pay. It doesn't pay bad. It's like $225 for the day.
Get out of here!
But it's a long day. I mean, you're starting at 5 in the morning. You're not done till 8 o'clock at night.
5 in the morning. Nope.
Yeah. But I mean, there are mistakes. I mean, that's what you get when you put old people in front of technology.
Yeah, I know. I see you with your computer. I know.
Yeah. I mean, they've been using index cards for hundreds of years to find out. Oh, you're Tim Hamilton. Okay, yeah, I know. I knew your father. Oh, yeah, here you go. And now they're, just doing, and they're not trusting of technology. And Maryland has taken a step back. We're now doing manual votes as opposed to the electronic voting, where we actually take the marker and connect the two lines that we want to.
So we're back to the hanging Chad land of 2000.
And not quite that system, but yes, we're doing it a manual type of a thing, which hopefully is enabled to manually go back and say, okay, yes, this is how Tim Hamilton voted. He was assigned this serial number, and here's the serial number that matches his ballot and everything else. So we will see.
And we get a new senator too.
Yes, we do. Senator Barber has retired, and we've got Chris Van Hollen, who is the representative, a congressional representative from the area. I think he's PG and Howard County mostly.
He got the endorsement of the Capitol.
Is running against Kathy Szeliga, who is the Republican without a chance.
Well, yeah, and she's pretty. I mean, and actually, there was a good article in the Capitol today about that, where they give the endorsement. And they said, you know what, she is very capable. She's got advantages that Van Hollen doesn't have. But one of her downfalls is that she subscribes to the Republican package, which is one of which is the global climate, the climate change, and the climate change denial. And in a state like Maryland, which we are affected by that, then that's an issue.
Well, that also hurt Dr. Mark Plaster, who's running against John Sarbanes, who is our congressman in this. I think they say it is the most gerrymandered district in the nation.
District 3?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the pterodactyl. We talked about that last week with Kenny.
Yeah.
It is that's when, I mean, Texas is pretty gerrymandered, but whenever I see Republicans or Democrats point at Texas, I'm like, look at Maryland. It's the most gerrymandered. We both live in the 3rd district, and I think it's bullshit. It really is.
So we'll see how that goes. But I don't think John Sarbanes is defeatable. I think Mark Plaster came out and said he didn't believe in climate change.
No.
His reasoning was that, well, if anybody...
Because it's cold in the winter.
Well, if anybody has been out on a boat for any length of time...
Oh, yeah, that's right. The sailboat. Yeah, he got us with the sailing reference.
It was like, oh, come on.
It's just... You know that they're...
And he also does robocalls, and I don't like that.
I despise robocalls.
Yeah. No more we'll do a plug for these. They're not paying us, but this is awesome.
Yeah, it has changed my life.
A website called NoMoRobo, NoMoRobo.com. It's free.
For landlines.
For landlines. It's pay for cell phones, but you sign up, and they've got a huge database of all these people that robocall you and scam call you and stuff like that, and it intercepts the call. Your phone will chirp at home. It'll ring
once, and then that's it.
And it'll go away, and they just make them go away. It's free.
I've gone from literally 20 to 25 calls a day over the last year from Bridget from Card Services. I've gone from that to none. Yeah. And I haven't seen it with robocalls, so I don't know if people... Because, again, we're not a contested state, really. So, well, I mean, the local election. So, yeah, I should have been hearing it by now.
But, yeah, no, Mark Plaster, I know, was big on the robocalls. But I don't think he really stands a chance. I mean, John Sarbanes has been very good. I think he's been very responsive. I've not talked to him to understand whether he appreciates the gerrymandered district or not. I'd imagine he doesn't.
Why wouldn't he?
Well, I mean, obviously it's given him his office, but I think, from a effective standpoint of view, I mean, who do you represent? I mean, my gosh, he's up in Baltimore County. He's way down.
He goes out to Hagerstown.
Yeah. I mean, so he's all over the place in Frederick County.
Did you know that there is a separatist movement in Western Maryland? that they talk about breaking away from. I mean, it's small. I think they have a Facebook page, but they want to be a separate state.
Well, I heard Pennsylvania was looking at buying them.
But I get it. But that's where you kind of gently go, look, I understand why you're upset because you're a Republican and you feel like you're not represented and you're not, but you have no industry.
Hey, speaking of Western Maryland Republicans, I wonder what's happening with Dan Bongino lately.
He lost his shit in an interview with a reporter down in Florida.
Yes, he did.
There's some audio out there. It was trending on Facebook for a while, and he just he's former Secret Service, and he is kind of a darling of some elements of the Republican Party, but he can't get elected. He can't.
Yeah, he's a carpetbagger that's moved from
here to Florida,
Severna Park, and then he ran for House of Representatives or Congress, and then he ran for Senate.
Well, he's part of that. I guess you would classify it now as it's not Tea Party anymore.
The alt-right.
The alt-right. I mean, he's certainly part of that alt-right movement within the Republican Party.
But yeah, no, he did an Alec Baldwin Alec Baldwin went after his daughter. He just lost it. You're a piece of shit.
Yeah, he was screaming at a reporter, and the reporter recorded it. And you and I both met him at a Tweetmasters event thrown by Gene Deems a few years ago, and it was he's a very nice guy.
Oh, he did.
Very together.
He had his act together. Yeah, and just couldn't do it. But I mean, again, you look at what he was running for, and it's a difficult race. I mean, the guy could have probably done very well running as a county councilman.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, he had his eye on the prize. But I mean, he's just not gotten much traction.
Right.
I think it's the problem with when if you're coming in.
He's got plenty of traction. He's on Fox News all the time. He's got a couple of books under his belt. He's doing fine.
Yeah, that's one thing where the right really kicks ass is that they have like the book tours and the speaking tours, and they really do well with that. But I'm glad when it's all done. I'm not going to lie. I know everyone says that, but I'm a junkie, but I'm getting just exhausted from it.
It is. I've got so many friends that have, and you talked about the Facebook thing, that are just absolutely brilliant.
I have muted so many people on Facebook, literally maybe 40 people, like right and left, and that's not a false equivalency because the Hillary supporters, you're just as annoying. Listen to me, you are just as annoying as the Trump supporters.
Well,
everyone shut up. Seriously.
It's funny. You look at. I saw a thing on this morning that was a former Republican candidate for a county council position posted on Facebook how disgusting it was that the Wall Street Journal pandered to different audiences and had same picture, same front, but different headlines for Trump. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was totally proven wrong that it was all photoshopped. But I mean, this is somebody that's potentially an elected official is just saying, "Oh, yeah, I saw it on the internet."
Okay, again, because facts are irrelevant. They're absolutely irrelevant now. And people, if you confront someone with something, and they'll just, I'm talking, and again, not a false equivalency. If it does not fit their paradigm, they will. It's irrelevant, and they'll move on from that. Facts are completely irrelevant. Right. It drives me nuts.
All right, here's our endorsement section. Who are you endorsing?
Endorphin.
Yeah, endorphin. Who are you endorsing for president? Who gets the Maryland Crabs endorsement?
Well, you know what? So I voted last time for Gary Johnson because he was my governor when I lived in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. But Gary Johnson is...
Nepo!
He is a potted plant. I've come to realize that. He is... I like him. He's a nice guy. But he's a strict libertarian, and no one can be a strict libertarian. Mm-hmm. You can't believe that the private industry is going to correct the climate change issue. It just that they'll do it on their own because it's in their best interest to do so. It just doesn't happen. So he's out.
Right.
Jill Stein. Nope.
So you're probably going to have to go back into the
write-ins. The Meyer, yeah. So write-ins. I am going to vote Hillary Clinton, and I'm going to do it with one hand while I hold my nose. And for Hillary Clinton supporters, you should be begging my forgiveness, not saying welcome to the Clinton train. Welcome aboard. You finally came to your senses. You all suck. If you're telling me this, and you have a horrible candidate, she's a horrible person, and I have to vote for her because Republicans, you absolutely you done screwed up, Ron. You done screwed up.
Yep. Me, I'm going to do something that I've never done before, and some people will say, "Oh, he's going to vote Democrat." No, I cross party lines all the time.
I do too.
I don't have.
Well, I'm independent. So
I don't have a problem with that. But at this point, I am going to not vote the presidential election.
Really?
Yeah.
That's valid.
I will vote that. I mean, there's no way. I think that if I vote for Gary Johnson.
So many people are
Jill
doing. They're coming out the
Stein.
down ballot. That's the only reason they're coming out now.
Or anybody. I mean, and you look at. I mean, it's the down ballot to me is a little bit more important.
That's what everyone's saying.
And I just can't get. I mean, I can get behind some of Trump's positions.
He's right on NAFTA, and he's right on TPP.
I can get behind some of Hillary's stuff. I can't get beyond the two candidates.
They're horrible, and both political parties are awful.
Yeah, so I'm going to put a little note on my ballot. Don't you dare connect any of these lines. This was left blank on purpose. It's just like the SAT test. This page left blank on purpose. I can't get behind it either of them. I'm really disappointed as my daughter, this is her first election, and she's over at American University in D.C. and she and her friends are all like, 18 years and this is the shit we get.
That's horrible.
It really is. Sad time for America. Hopefully, whatever the outcome is, whoever the loser will be, will realize that the people have spoken, that we will have a fair election, and that they'll come together and figure out how to move forward from here.
All right. So if people want to yell at us about our votes, how do they reach us?
They can reach us on Twitter at Larry Hogan. Twitter at MD Krabs Podcast. If you want to go to Facebook, we have a page and a group, also the Maryland Crabs. You can find us online at themarylandcrabs.com. And if you want to email us directly, you can do that. And we always love suggestions for future shows or topics or anything like that. I mean, if you know somebody that would be a great guest to have on to talk pontificate or just bullshit, info at themarylandcrabs.com. But of course, make sure you get over to iTunes, give us a 5, write us a little comment, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff, and tell your friends.
Yeah, tell all your friends.
Yeah, I mean it's
and keep an eye on the Facebook pages because we are going to have some events coming up. We're going to do it with some local celebrities, if you will. But
did we get the strippers?
Well, I'm married, so yes.
Okay, good.
So we're going to do some local events. We got some stuff coming up like around Christmas. It's going to be fun. In the gloom of winter, we're going to do some stuff to kind of like some local venues we're kind of looking at right now. But we want to have some fun, you guys.
Yeah, we do. We're and just remember that when this election's over, another one starts.
And we all got to be friends after this. So
that's right. We've got a local election next year.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be the fun one. We have the mayoral election. That's gonna be where we're gonna have a blast.
And we're calling you out, Mike Panelese and Gavin Buckley. We want you on a debate.
Yes, yeah, we want to have you in here. No pre-approved questions. You got to think for yourselves, and it's gonna be we're gonna be fair. There's gonna be no gotchas.
And no help allowed.
There's gonna be lots of gotchas.
You can't have your dad, and you can't have your business partner there coaching you away.
Yeah, so stay tuned for all that. And again, thanks for listening. Thanks for helping us grow because it's been great. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I'm John Fernay. That's Tim Hamilton.
Yep.
You can find me elsewhere at Annapolis on Twitter, or I get up really early in the morning and do this morning show thing on WRNR with Rob Tim. And you're on Twitter all the time too.
Tim Hamilton 47.
What's the 47 all about?
I can't tell you.
Secret?
We're not good friends, John. We just do this thing.
Yeah. Later.
Bye.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them at all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home.